So, former Impact Wrestling star Kylie Rae. Now, I know a lot of you have wanted me to speak about this. It's obviously a pretty big story, actually, when it comes to Impact Wrestling, the NWA, and Kylie Rae, because the National Wrestling Alliance has announced that they have officially signed Kylie Rae to a contract, a talent contract, to compete for the promotion. Now, the signing of Kylie Rae to the NWA was announced by Joe Galli during NWA's When Our Shadows Fall pay-per-view yesterday. Now, PW Insider is reporting that Kylie Rae was still under contract with Impact Wrestling even through last year. Now, Kylie Rae, of course, announced she was no longer a professional wrestler after she missed the Bound for Glory pay-per-view back in October of 2020. But over the last several weeks, both Impact Wrestling and the National Wrestling Alliance worked on an agreement. That agreement was finalized about 5 days or so ago, with Impact Wrestling allowing Kylie Rae to sign with the NWA. Now, as noted during last night's show, When Our Shadows Fall, Kylie Rae and Taryn Terrell defeated Thunder Rosa and Melina on the pay-per-view. So, first of all, I know that people are going to criticize Kylie Rae. I know people are going to roll their eyes when they see that she signed with the NWA, considering how things ended with her in AEW, considering how things ended with her in Impact Wrestling. I'm not going to do that, obviously. And we don't want to speculate too much because, again, that's not fair. When you're talking about anything medical, and you know me here on the channel, we've spoken about some pretty big issues and some pretty personal issues when it comes to talents and news stories. We don't shy away from anything, but my line always is when it comes to medical records and illnesses, whether that's physical health, mental health, whatever, I'm very much of the case of if the talent's willing to disclose it themselves, we'll talk about it. If not, it's not for us to speculate on, because that's not fair. And it's not fair to speculate on when it comes to Kylie Rae. What we have to deal with when it comes to Kylie Rae and the way that it's ended for her with Impact Wrestling and obviously started up with her in the National Wrestling Alliance, we have to deal with the facts, because that's all that we have. And if we don't deal with the facts, if we start wildly speculating on stuff, that's not fair and that's not right. That's not what we do here on the channel. Now, obviously, the situation with Kylie Rae and Impact Wrestling was a bit of a strange one, and it was an alarming one, because Kylie Rae throughout last year, throughout the majority of 2020, was really featured in on Impact Wrestling. If you watch those shows from about April or so onwards, when it comes to Kylie Rae, she was heavily featured on Impact Wrestling programming. In fact, she was scheduled to face Deonna Purrazzo for the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Championship at Bound for Glory last year. In addition to facing her, she was scheduled to win. Those plans date all the way back to Slammiversary in July last year. Around this time last year was the beginning of her getting ready to face Deonna Purrazzo in October at Bound for Glory and win the Knockouts Championship. They were going to build that Knockouts division around Kylie Rae, because at Slammiversary, she won that Knockouts Battle Royale, and by winning that, she earned the opportunity for a future Knockouts Championship opportunity. As I mentioned, that was going to be against Deonna Purrazzo at Bound for Glory. The story that they were trying to sort of tell was kind of Deonna Purrazzo with the bullies sort of situation, and they were bullying Kylie Rae, and then Kylie Rae would overcome Deonna Purrazzo, and then Kylie Rae, she would be featured for a heavy and a very lengthy Knockouts Championship reign in Impact Wrestling. Now, obviously, that didn't happen because the match didn't happen. Now, the details as to what really did happen when it comes to Bound for Glory last year are still kind of up in the air. There's lots of different accounts as to what happened. Initially, when we were watching the show, and I mean, the evidence is out there. I mean, I'm not going to shy away from it. It's on the YouTube channel. Initially, it was reported that Kylie Rae just didn't show up, that she no-showed the event. And watching the show live for Bound for Glory, essentially what happened is we were expecting this Deonna Purrazzo versus Kylie Rae match. We even saw a video package for the Deonna Purrazzo versus Kylie Rae match, and then, of course, it never happened. Instead, we got the Su Yung reappearance, and Su Yung defeated Deonna Purrazzo. That's what happened instead. Now, initially, reports were that she was injured and she couldn't compete. Then were reports that they were saying that she didn't show up. Then there were reports saying that she had traveled to Nashville to compete at the event. She was even at Skyway Studios, or she was going to go to Skyway Studios. Then there were reports saying that she didn't show up to the building for bell time. There was concern as the event was going on, or in the build up to the event, that she wasn't there and what was going on. Then there were reports that she was in her hotel room in Nashville and people had been able to contact her. There was all this misinformation as to what was going on, and frankly, like I said, I don't think even now, nearly a year removed from the events, I still don't think people truly know what's going on, and probably we never will, unless Kylie Rae is going to open up about it, which, as far as I'm aware, she hasn't yet, or other people are going to open up about it. We don't know. So we knew that Kylie Rae didn't appear on the show. And then it was reported that she wouldn't be appearing for Impact Wrestling for a while. She was dealing with some issues. Impact Wrestling had been incredibly supportive of her during the entirety of the process. Had told her to take as much time as she needed. They had hoped that one day she would come back, but they didn't know, essentially. Kylie Rae then stayed, off of social media for a period of time, deactivated all of her social media accounts, which is the wise thing to do in that situation. She subsequently revealed on a Patreon service that she was no longer a professional wrestler and that essentially she was done. Everyone wished her well. She, as I mentioned, went off of social media, and I think most people expected that was kind of it. Now, there was some kind of assumption that maybe she will come back, and if she was going to come back anywhere, she would come back to Impact Wrestling. Why? Because she was under contract to Impact Wrestling. She was under contract to Impact, and as we spoke about previously here on the channel at the time, the general consensus was she's going to take some time away. Impact Wrestling aren't putting any pressure on her. I think initially, maybe a couple of weeks after the fact, they maybe reached out and asked if she wanted to come back. They were obviously told no. And essentially, it was the case of she's under contract, but we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see if she doesn't want to come back, if she just wants to move on with her life, if obviously the world of professional wrestling is too much for her, or she's got some issues that she needs to deal with, mental, physical, whatever. Impact Wrestling are totally supportive and are going to give her all the time that she needs. And after a while of being away from the spotlight for a while, I think the general consensus was that maybe she's not going to come back. Maybe she is just going to be a personality on social media, or maybe she will never wrestle again. The most important thing in any of these situations, is health and happiness. The two H's, health and happiness. That's it. Pro wrestling, we love it, and I'm sure there are so many fans of Kylie Rae, and I'm sure there are so many fans of professional wrestling, but ultimately, it pales in significance to the happiness and the health of the performer. That has to come first. So I think everyone was very respectful, and they understood the situation. Then it was announced that she would be returning for Warrior Wrestling in one of their upcoming series. And everyone said, well, it's great to see Kylie Rae back. What does this mean about Impact Wrestling? Is she going to come back to Impact? Is this just a one-off? What's the situation? And now she started making these appearances for the NWA. And now it looks like she is signed with the NWA. And somehow she has worked out a release from Impact Wrestling. Again, the finer details of that. We do have another report that I do want to speak on before we carry on. This one comes from Fightful Select, which is interesting. Of course, Fightful Select is, absolutely fantastic. It's their Patreon service. Be sure to check it out. Subscribe. You won't regret it. They have a ton of exclusive pro wrestling content. They're always the first to break stories, fact-check information, good journalism. Just go and do it. You won't regret it. Now, they've got some more details when it comes to Kylie Rae and the signing of NWA. The report says, quote, NWA announced on their show today that Kylie Rae had signed a deal with the company, leading to many surprised people. As the last we'd heard, she was under contract to Impact Wrestling. PW Insider has noted that the deal came together over the last few weeks, as we mentioned, with the deal being hammered out in the last few days. Fightful reached out to Impact Wednesday, but hadn't heard back about the matter. Many members of the Impact roster were surprised by the news and were not aware the deal was being made. Those that we've spoken to feel no ill will towards Kylie Rae, but hadn't heard from her in the few months following her absence, and were just glad to see and hear that she was okay. We've been told Kylie spoke to some members of the Impact roster this weekend, this was at the Warrior Wrestling show, and apologized for the absence as she did to Impact herself. So it looks like there's no ill will, there's no heat, there's no, terrible situation going on. There's no people being really angry at people. Ultimately, considering everything that happened, considering the incident at Bound for Glory, and considering the absence from pro wrestling after that, the main consensus here, and I think the main consensus is absolutely right from Impact, from the talent, from you, from fans of pro wrestling, whatever, is that Kylie Rae is okay and she's healthy, and hopefully she's back doing what she loves. And if that is in the NWA, or if that's in Warrior Wrestling, or that's wherever, that's only a positive. That can only be seen as a positive in this situation. Would we have liked to have seen Kylie Rae back inside of an Impact Wrestling ring? Of course we would have. The Impact Wrestling Knockouts division is one of the best women's division in the world. Arguably, it's right up there with WWE as the best female talent roster, certainly in North America. So would we have liked to have seen Kylie Rae compete in Impact once again? Absolutely. And there were big plans for Kylie Rae in Impact Wrestling. But ultimately, health and happiness comes first. That is the paramount in any of these situations, pro wrestling or not. So to hear and see that maybe Kylie Rae is feeling healthier, is feeling better, is feeling happier, that's what we have to support. Impact Wrestling don't seem to have an issue with the matter. Impact Talent don't seem to have an issue with the matter. Kylie Rae looks to have, mend any bridges that were burnt. I don't think there were. So that's the situation, and hopefully she has all of the success that she has coming to earn the NWA. And that's really the end of the situation there. Of course, if we hear more details, we'll talk about it here on the channel. Some other things I did want to talk about. Matt Cardona. This is such a fun story. Such a fun story. I had to talk about it. I didn't know where we were going to fit it in. Of course, Matt Cardona, I don't even know if he's officially signed to the Impact Wrestling roster. Obviously, he's been making Impact Wrestling appearances since January, so he has some form of agreement at the very least. But Game Changer Wrestling Zombie Walk ended in a shocking fashion last night, and it featured Matt Cardona in the closing moments of the show. This was just brilliant. Just brilliant. Now, after the GCW World Championship match between Nick Gage and Jimmy Lloyd ended in a no contest, a hooded figure appeared behind the King of Ultra Violence and mimicked Jon Moxley, who, of course, Gage is currently feuding with. Jon Moxley has appeared at several recent GCW shows, brawling and attacking Nick Gage, obviously setting up some kind of match in the future. But the figure, the masked figure, the hooded figure, then dropped Nick Gage with a paradigm shift, even did the Jon Moxley mannerisms as well. Everyone thought it's Jon Moxley, he's going to remove the mask and it's Jon Moxley. But the mystery figure removed the hood to reveal themselves as none other than Matt Cardona, which was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The former WWE superstar and current Impact star proceeded to bask in the vitriol shouted at him by the GCW crowd in attendance, and he gave many fans the middle finger as he headed to the back. Now, if you're not aware, this is why this is fantastic, and I think most people kind of thought something like this was maybe coming. Obviously, Matt Cardona being inside of a GCW event is just so out of character and so out of place. It's brilliant. I'll give my thoughts on it in a second. But this rivalry between Nick Gage and Matt Cardona has been stemming from an interaction in early May where Matt Cardona admitted that he would be willing to face the GCW World Champion. Gage then responded soon after as he continued to call out Matt Cardona, consistently referring to him as Zack Ryder. Now, these pot shots continued at each other on social media, but I think most people thought, realistically, Matt Cardona, a former WWE superstar, a pretty boy, is Zack Ryder going to appear in GCW? And he did it. He did it. Cardona ultimately didn't respond on social media, but the two men looked set to go one-on-one with the Impact star having set his sights on the GCW World Championship. Now, there is some more information on this, so I'll touch on this before I give you my thoughts on it, because as you can tell, I'm a big fan. Matt Cardona's attack on Nick Gage blew up on Sunday, with hype being built to an eventual match between the two. Now, the finish saw Matt Cardona, as I mentioned, dressed as a druid, emulating Jon Moxley's mannerisms before hitting a paradigm shift, revealing his identity to the crowd. Now, Fightful Select is reporting that Matt Cardona was actually in full gimmick backstage to prevent word from getting out about his appearance, and the spot was only known by a select few people. Now, obviously, this is building to some form of a match between Cardona and Nick Gage. Look, GCW Deathmatch Wrestling, I'll be totally transparent and honest, not really totally my thing. I like most people, I was fringe aware of GCW, I was fringe aware of Deathmatch Wrestling. I've seen it, I've seen CZW stuff. I think if you're a pro wrestling fan or just aware of all different aspects of pro wrestling, you do have to touch everything, see what you like. It's like watching different kinds of films or listening to different kind of music. You have to see if you like metal music. You have to like seeing if you like watching horror films or slasher films or romantic comedies or whatever. You have to see what you like. Deathmatch wrestling, has it really ever been for me? I can't say I'm totally familiar with the world. I'm aware of it. I find it a little bit that, for instance, when I watched the Dark Side of the Ring documentary on Nick Gage, some of that is very tough to watch, and I'm not hiding that at all. Like the part when he gets, stabbed and all that, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I love this. And I'll tell you why I love this, because this is GCW and CZW was meant to kind of serve as the next evolution, I would guess, of ECW from the 1990s, early 2000s. When ECW shut down, 2001, CZW, companies like GCW have taken it upon themselves to be, well, we're going to take it to the next level of extreme. We do the fluorescent light tubes, we do the barbed wire, we do the glass and the King of the Death matches, and we do all that kind of stuff. We mix in that real gory, hardcore style from ECW and from those Japanese death matches, that kind of stuff. That's what we do, but we bring it into the mainstream. And certainly GCW has been building a steady reputation over the course of the last few years anyway. But recently, with that Dark Side of the Ring documentary on Nick Gage, they've just exploded to another level. I mean, Nick Gage is unbelievably popular right now. He was anyway, but especially now. And the Matt Cardona appearance last night is just so perfect because, to me, it's the exact same as when Jim Cornette or Jerry the King Lawler appeared inside of the ECW arena in the 1990s, because they are so polar opposites. There is nobody more out of place and just doesn't fit than Zack Ryder. Woo, woo, woo. You know it. Long Island IC, Z-True Long Island Story, the polished WWE superstar, the corporate WWE superstar, the internet darling, the internet guy, the figure guy. He likes collecting wrestling figures and all that kind of stuff. He so does not fit GCW that it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Because immediately, just by Matt Cardona taking the mask off and just revealing that Zack Ryder, really Zack Ryder, the guy that when he was in WWE wrestled in one like half tights in ECW and all that kind of stuff, and doing the whole woo 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 and the headband and the sunglasses, all that kind of stuff, that is just so not in that GCW universe. They hate that. They hate that phony BS corporate woo woo woo, all that sort of cheesy pop stuff. They hate it. And Matt Cardona or Zack Ryder showing up inside that arena, inside that universe, immediately turns that entire building into hating his guts. He was the top heel inside that building within seconds. They hate that. They were chanting F you, all that kind of stuff. They hated Matt Cardona, and it reminded me so much of Jim Cornette or Jerry the King Lawler inside the ECW arena, because it just doesn't fit, which is why it's perfect. That's how you get heat. That's how you get legitimate heat. Now, of course, everyone loved it. I've watched the clip like 500 times. I'm sure everyone inside the arena, to be honest, or inside, you know, the place that the event was being held, I'm sure they loved it. They thought, oh, awesome, Matt Cardona. They don't really hate Matt Cardona, but they hate the idea of Zack Ryder. They hate WWE, and they hate that kind of pro wrestling. They love GCW. They love that deathmatch wrestling. They love Nick Gage, and you can't get anyone more polar opposite than Nick Gage than Zack Ryder. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and I loved it. I loved the reaction, because there were so many different waves of the reaction as well. There's the reaction of the hooded figure coming up behind Nick Gage. Everyone starts buzzing and they start cheering. Then when it's the Matt Cardona, when he does the Jon Moxley mannerisms, and then he does the paradigm shift, the crowd pops because they think, here we go, it's Jon Moxley. He takes off the mask, you get a pop, but there's an even bigger pop and a sort of a moment of reaction and realization. That's not Jon Moxley, that's Matt Cardona, that's Zack Ryder in GCW. It was just, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I'm fascinated, absolutely fascinated to see where this one goes. Again, I'm not huge on the deathmatch wrestling. I'm not huge on the fluorescent light tubes and the barbed wire and all that kind of stuff. But to see Matt Cardona inside that environment, to see Matt Cardona be hit with a fluorescent light tube or take thumbtacks or barbed wire or mouse traps or glass, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and I'm incredibly excited to see where this one heads up. I've been saying for a long time, I think I've been saying it even in the recent weeks when I spoke about Matt Cardona here on the channel. Matt Cardona and Zack Ryder are still the same person. We haven't really seen any evolution or any change to the character since Matt Cardona was released by WWE last year. He's still basically been Zack Ryder. Yes, he's changed the name. Yes, he's changed the entrance music, but he still looks the same. He still acts the same. He still wears the same gear. There's no real difference. He might be in better shape, and he might say he's always ready, all that kind of stuff, but you need something different. Where's the evolution? Where's the edge? This is exactly the edge that he needs. Prove to people that he can do a bit of ultra-violence. Maybe he acts as a heel inside of this environment, and he transitions that over to Impact Wrestling or whatever. This, you can see just by his reaction on social media, he seems energized. Now, realistically, does he know what he's getting himself in for? I don't know. This is Nick Gage after all, and the guy's insane and he's crazy. Just ask David Arquette. So I'm fascinated to see where this one goes. I'll buy the event. Whatever event they do it, I'll buy it. We'll stream it here on the channel. We'll do a watch along or something, because I'm just fascinated. I'm absolutely fascinated, and I loved it. I loved the reaction. I loved the segment. I loved all of it. So really excited about this one. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I do want to talk briefly about Josh Alexander once again. We've been covering the X Division a lot here on the channel recently. This was an interview we covered, but there are other aspects of Josh Alexander's interview with It's Our House podcast that I do want to talk about. And he spoke about the recent resurgence of Impact Wrestling. When asked about the growth of each division in Impact since rebranding a few years ago, Josh Alexander had this to say, which I thought was interesting. He said, quotes, "I agree. I think the X Division, just like all of Impact Wrestling, has got a resurgence in the last few years, and it's been nothing but growth for pretty much 3 or 4 years since, the rebranding from Anthem and everything else that's been going on. Great. I think the X Division and the Knockouts Division are in growth periods as well right now, and he also continued to speak about this growth period and how he believes the domains can build on it. This is what he had to say, quote, and I think we just have to continue to build upon the way that we build upon that is by every single time we get in the ring, we give everybody what they want to see and what is the best match possible by all competitors, and we've surrounded our locker room with people that can hit home runs all the time. So that's the only thing. I think we're here to work. I think we're here to try and make the product better, and by making the product better, we just have to give people progress. And I think that's great. I'm really, like we said, I've covered the X Division a couple of times over the course of the last couple of weeks or so, primarily because Impact Wrestling are focusing on it so much. As I mentioned, they want to elevate it to the same level as the World Championship. Comparisons have been made between the X Division and the ECW Television Championship in the late 90s with Rob Van Dam. So maybe Josh Alexander's going to get a super long title reign. That's exciting as well. But I'm glad to see that Josh Alexander and other promotions and other podcasts and media outlets are recognizing what they're calling the resurgence of Impact Wrestling. Is it a resurgence? Impact Wrestling right now is certainly more relevant than it has been for the last 3 years, 4 years. I think that's fair. This is a company, this is a brand that has more lives than a cat. It's nearly been dead 9 times, 10 times, and gone out of business and different ownerships and all that kind of stuff. So I think we are seeing a bit of a resurgence to Impact Wrestling. Are we ever going to get to the peak that they were at in the late 2000s? No, because they're not on Spike TV. They're not on a cable network that's big. They've got financially good backing in terms of Anthem. They've got money. They can bring in talent if they want to. They've got to get off Access TV. But if you've watched the product over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, you will see that the product has gradually got better. And frankly, we talk about the NWA. Impact's a far better product than the NWA right now. Impact's a far better product than Ring of Honor right now. In some instances, Ring of Honor, certainly Monday Night Raw, is a better product than Monday Night Raw in terms of quality, storytelling, you name it. So Impact Wrestling is seeing a bit of a resurgence right now, and it's great to see. And Josh Alexander and people like Scott D'Amore and Don Callis and Ed Nordholm and everyone behind the scenes and the Knockouts and Impact Wrestling, they're a reason why. So it's interesting to see that obviously he feels that there's a resurgence, that other outlets feel that there's a resurgence going on. And look, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of the Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Kylie Rae signing with the NWA, Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona, whatever you want to call him, appearing at GCW Zombie Walk yesterday, and Josh Alexander discussing the growth and resurgence of Impact Wrestling. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.